Good day, everyone. I am Crystal Joyce B. Cañadora.
And I am Windilo Balili, and today we will gonna do the pre-critical response of The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald.
But before that, let us have first the author itself, F. Scott Fitzgerald. He was known as American writer, also known as Francis Scott Key Fitzgerald. So he was born in September 24, 1896 at St. Paul, Minnesota. And he was also an American short story writer and novelist famous for his most brilliant novel being The Great Gatsby in 1925.
So the dominant influences of F. Scott Fitzgerald were aspiration, literature, and alcohol. But for his The Great Gatsby, accordingly, it perfectly reflected the culture of the 1920s. So Fitzgerald did it by showing the character's absence of regard for morals.
So, The Great Gatsby is a classic novel that tells the story of Jay Gatsby, a wealthy and mysterious man who throws extravagant parties in hopes of winning back his former love, Daisy Buchanan.
So the story is narrated by Gatsby's neighbor, who is Nick Carraway, who becomes drawn into the world of the wealthy elite and becomes a close friend of Gatsby. So as we will go through the discussion, we will delve into the following: the settings, characters, plot, structure, which has 5 components: the exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and denouement.
So we also have the style, atmosphere, which has two components, which are environment, mood, and feeling. So the last one is theme.
So now let's start with the setting. So in the setting, we have here 3 usual settings that happen in the story: the West Egg, Gatsby's mansion, and summer as the time. So first, now we have West Egg, which can be found in chapter 1, page 7. So I lived at West Egg, the less fashionable of the two. Though this is a most superficial tag to express the bizarre and not a little sinister contrast between them, my house was at the very tip of the egg, only 50 yards from the sound and squeezed between 2 huge places that rented for 12 or 15,000 season.
So this area is where the newly rich like Gatsby himself reside. So the environment here is characterized by ostentatious display of wealth and opulence. Gatsby's mansion, with its grandeur and extravagance, symbolizes the rich and their pursuit of the American dream. However, despite the outward appearances of luxury, West Egg also has an air of newness and lack of refinement, as its residents often lack the social connections and cultural pedigree of those in East Egg.
So the next setting we have
um, Gatsby's mansion. We can find this in chapter 3, page 32. In his blue gardens, men and girls came and went like moths among the whispering and the champagne and the stars.
So Gatsby's mansion. So the mansion symbolizes the grandeur and emptiness of the 1920s era, reflecting the themes of wealth, nostalgia, and identity within the story. So additionally, according to what we have researched, there are real-life mansions like Oaxaca Castle in Long Island, which is believed to have inspired the portrayal of Gatsby's mansion in the novel. So today, Oaxaca Castle serves a historic hotel and popular filming location. So the last setting we have here is as summer as the time, which we can find in chapter 1, page 7.
Across the courtesy bay, the white places of fashionable as we egg glittered along the water, and the history of the summer really begins on the evening I drove over there to have dinner with the Tom Buchanans. So summer serves as the typical setting for the Great Gatsby because it symbolizes the height of extravagance parties and social gatherings in the roaring 20s. Additionally, the warmth and the vibrancy of summer creates an atmosphere of heightened emotion and desire, reflecting the passion and conflicts of the characters in the novel.
So now let's move on to the characters of the story. First, of course, we have Jay Gatsby. It is evident in chapters 3, page 32, and chapter 3, page 38. So the first line is, at least once a fortnight, a chorus of caterers came down with several hundred feet of canvas and enough colored lights to make a Christmas tree of Gatsby's enormous garden. The second line is, I'm Gatsby, he said suddenly.
So Jay Gatsby is a mysterious man who throws extravagant parties with the sole aim of attracting the attention of Daisy Buchanan, Nick's cousin. So Gatsby, say self-made millionaire with a shadowy past, is obsessed with Daisy. So a beautiful socialite trapped in loveless marriage. So the next one is Daisy Buchanan. We can find this in chapter 1, page 7 and chapter 4, page 59. So the first line is, Daisy was my second cousin once removed. The second line is, what's the matter, Daisy? I was scared. I can tell you, I've never seen a girl like that before.
So Daisy Buchanan is portrayed as a charming and attractive figure. She is depicted as fragile and elegant with captivating eyes and sophisticated demeanor. So her voice is described as melodious and enchanting, capable of captivating those around her. But beyond her external beauty, she carries a sense of fragility and sorrow. So the next character is Tom Buchanan. It is evident in chapter 1, page 7. So the line is, her husband, among various physical accomplishments, had been one of the most powerful ants that ever played football at New Haven, a national figure in a way, one of those men who reached such an acute limited excellence at 21 that everything afterward savors of anticlimax.
So Tom Buchanan is described as a physical, imposing, wealthy man with a sense of entitlement. So it exhibits arrogance, aggression, and a domineering nature, often using his power to control others, including his wife Daisy. Tom is depicted as prejudiced, expressing racist and sexist views. So the next one is Nick Carraway. We can find this in chapter 1, page 4. So this is the line. In my younger and more vulnerable year, my father gave me some advice that I've never been turning over in my mind ever since.
So Nick Haraway is the narrator of the story who becomes drawn into the world of the wealthy elite and becomes a close friend of Gatsby. He is a young man from Minnesota who moved to New York for work. He is depicted as reserved, observant, honest, and moral. So, offering a contrast to the morally ambiguous characters around him. Nick serves as a reliable narrator, providing insight into the story's events and characters. Nick is also the cousin of Daisy Buchanan. So the next character is Myrtle Wilson. We can find this one in chapter 3, page 39. So the line is, I was looking at an elegant young roughneck, a year or two over 30, whose elaborate formality of speech just missed being absurd.
So Myrtle Wilson is the Great Gatsby is portrayed as a vivacious and seductive woman trapped in a tumultuous marriage with George Wilson. She is depicted as ambitious and discontent with his lower class life, seeking escape through her affair with Tom Buchanan. So Myrtle exudes of a sense of yearning for wealth and status, often displaying a brash and materialistic demeanor. Her character is marked by a desire for luxury and glamour, which ultimately leads to a tragic consequences as she become entangled in the complexities of the wealthy and privileged world of East Egg.
So the next character we have George Wilson. We can find this one in chapter 2, page 21.
So this is the line. He was a bland, spiritless man, anemic and faintly handsome when he saw a dawn of gleam of hope sprung into his light blue eyes.
So George Wilson is shown as a quiet and diligent man who runs a garage in a poor area called the Valley of Ashes. He is often overshadowed by his more forceful wife, Myrtle Wilson, and represents the hardships faced by the working class in a society where the rich live luxuriously in West Egg and East Egg. So despite his unassuming nature, George experiences sadness and hopelessness as he deals with the problem in his marriage and the harsh differences between social class, reflecting the tough realities of the American dream portrayed in the story. Now, let us move on to the plot, and we formulated this one.
If people care more about money and social status than being true to themselves, being honest, what does that say about what we think is important?
So we have here the conflict, the man versus man, and the man versus society. First, we have the man versus man. So we can find this in chapter 7, pages 100 and 103. So the line is,
I want to know what Mr. Gatsby has to tell me. Your wife doesn't love you, said Gatsby. She never loved you. She loves me. You must be crazy, exclaimed Tom atomically. Gatsby sprang to his feet, vivid with excitement. She never loved you. Do you hear me? I found out, so this is the next line. I found out what your drugstore were. He turned to us and spoke rapidly. He and this Wolf Fisham bought up a lot of side street drug stores here and in Chicago. So, this chapter features a heated confrontation between Gatsby and Tom at the Plaza Hotel, where Gatsby openly declares his love for Daisy and challenges Tom's claim over her. Tom's in return exposes Gatsby's criminal past and asserts his dominance, leading to a tense exchange between the two men.
so the next conflict, we have man versus society. We can find this in chapter 2, page 29 and chapter 3, page 33. So the line is, I was within and without, simultaneously enchanted and repelled by the inexhaustible variety of life. The second line is, I believe that on the first night I went to Gatsby's house, I was one of the few guests who had actually been invited. People were not invited, they went there. So, Gatsby's extravagant parties serve as a microcosm of the superficiality and materialism of the 1920s. So, the lavish displays of wealth and excess mask the characters' inner emptiness and dissatisfaction, reflecting the societal obsession with appearance and social status. So now let us move on to the structure of the novel. First, we have the exposition. So we can find this one in chapter 1, page 4. So the line is, in my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. So the initial statement by Nick Carraway, who served as the narrator, sets the tone for the reflective storytelling style and presents Nick's thoughtful perspective. So these lines establish the framework for the story and provide insights into Nick's perspective as he navigates the world of wealth, privilege, and moral ambiguity. So, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald follows the story of Jay Gatsby, a mysterious and wealthy man, through the eyes of Nick Carraway, a young man who moves to New York and becomes Gatsby's neighbor. So this is the exposition, introduces the main characters, the setting, and sets up the central conflict, which revolves around Gatsby's obsession with Daisy Buchanan, which is who is Nick's cousin, and his attempts to win her back. So the second structure is the rising action.
which we can find this in chapter 2, page 29. So this is the line. I was within and without, stimulously enchanted and repelled by the inexhaustible variety of life. So the rising action, the lines capture the rising tension and conflict that drive the narrative forward, leading the climatic events of the Great Gatsby. So in the rising action, it tension the escalate as Gatsby's pursuit of Daisy's intensifies. Gatsby throws a lavish parties hoping Daisy will attend, while Nick learns about the Gatsby's mysterious past and his connection to Daisy. So Gatsby and Daisy rekindle their romance, but their affair becomes complicated by Daisy's marriage to Tom Buchanan. So the rising action culminates in a confrontation between Gatsby, Tom, and Daisy, leading to the tragic consequences.
Now let us move on to the climax of the novel, which we can find in chapter 9, page 100. So the line is, I want to know what Mr. Gatsby has to tell me. Your wife doesn't love you, said Gatsby. She's never loved you. She loves me. You must be crazy, exclaimed Tom automatically. Gatsby sprang to his feet, vivid with excitement. She never loved you, do you hear? He cried. She only married you because I was poor and she was tired of waiting for me. It was a terrible mistake, but in her heart, she never loved anyone except me. So, the climax of the story declares a heartfelt declaration to the Tom exposes the intensity of his love towards Daisy, and it illustrates his determination to fight to the relationship, revealing the depth of his commitment to winning her heart. So, the climax is when Tom confronts Gatsby about his relationship with Daisy. So as you can see, Gatsby reveals past and his illicit activities. So Tom revealed Gatsby's past here, and this confrontation reaches its peak when Daisy is forced to choose between Gatsby and Tom, ultimately siding with her husband Tom. So this moment marks the highest point of tension and leads to the unraveling of Gatsby's dream. Now let us proceed to
The following action, so we can find this in chapter 9, page 138. So this is the line. So he has come a long way to this blue lawn, and his dream must have seemed so close that he could hardly fail to grasp it. So Nick contemplates Gatsby's disappointment and the recognition that his aspiration of being with Daisy again might remain unfulfilled. So, in the following action on The Great Gatsby, so Gatsby's dream of reuniting with Daisy collapses as she chooses to stay with Tom. So Gatsby becomes increasingly desperate to hold on to his vision of the past, while Tom and Daisy retreat into their wealthy, privileged world. So Nick tries to intervenes, but he finds himself powerless to prevent the tragedy that unfolds. The following action is characterized by Gatsby isolation and eventual demise.
So next we have the denouement, which we can find in chapter 9, page 135. So the line is, after Gatsby's death, New York was haunted for me. All the city was clamoring. It was on fire, twisting, turning into the frenzy of the exposition. So, this is the denouement of where Nick contemplates the turbulent aftermath following Gatsby's death. So, it happened after Gatsby's death, symbolizing the moral decline and hollowness prevalent in the society of the Jazz Age. So, This reflection underscores the portrayal of a world where superficiality and corruption reign, mirroring the disillusionment and emptiness that depicted in the novel. So this line shows the end of The Great Gatsby, where Nick accepts the outcomes of the story and thinks deeply about the meaning behind Gatsby's life and death.
So now let's move on to the style. So, so The Great Gatsby has a metaphoric and language and imagery. So it has three lines, metaphoric language. So the first one, we can find this in chapter 3, page 32. In his blue gardens, men and girls came and went like moth among the whispering and the champagne and the stars. So, in this line from chapter 3 uses the metaphor of mood to describe the guests at Gatsby parties, highlighting their fleeting and ephemeral nature.
So the second metaphoric language and imagery, we can find this one in chapter 7, page 92. The line is, "Her voice is full of money," he said suddenly. So it is Gatsby's observation about Daisy's voice in chapter 7, which employs metaphorical language to convey her allure and the association of wealth with the persona of Daisy Buchanan.
So be it. So we bet on boats against the current, burn back ceaselessly into the past. So this famous closing line of the novel from chapter 9 employs the metaphor of boats against the current to symbolizes the human struggle against the force of fate and time. So these lines demonstrate how F. Scott Fitzgerald uses metaphor and imagery to enrich the narrative and convey the deeper layer of meaning in The Great Gatsby.
So now let's proceed to the style of the novel, which is the narrative. It's in the narrative form. So we can find this one in chapter 3, page 47. The line is, "I am one of the few honest people that I have ever known." So the novel is narrated by Nick Carraway, whose introspective and reflective voice shapes the reader's understanding of the events and characters. Nick's narration is marked by its honesty, sensitivity, and moral ambiguity, adding depth to the story and its theme. Now let's proceed to the atmosphere of the novel, which are the West Egg and the East Egg. So in West Egg, we can find this one in chapter 1, page 7. And the environment in West Egg is newness and lack of refinement. So the line is, "I lived at West Egg, the less fashionable of the two, though this is the most superficial tag to express the bizarre and not a little sinister contrast between them. My house was at the very tip of the egg, only 50 yards from the sound and squeeze of two huge places that rented 12 or 15,000, and second environment is in East Egg, and the environment there is traditional and refinement. We can find this one in chapter 1, page 7. Across the courtesy bay, the white palaces of fashionable East Egg glittered along the water.
So, the environment in The Great Gatsby is primarily set in the two constructing locations, which are West Egg and East Egg. So, both fictionalized version of the real places on the Long Island's New York. So, West Egg is the area is where the newly rich like Gatsby himself reside. The environment here is characterized by ostentatious display of wealth and opulence. So Gatsby's mansion with its grandeur and extravagance symbolizes a rich and their pursuit of the American dream. However, despite the outward appearance of luxury, West Egg also has an air of newness and lack of refinement, as its residents often lack the social connections and cultural pedigree of those in the East Egg.
While in contrast to West Egg, East Egg is home to the old money elite, represented by characters like Tom and Daisy Buchanan. So the environment here exudes a sense of tradition, refinement, and aristocratic privilege. So the mansions in East Egg are elegant and understated, reflecting the wealth and status that has been passed down through generations. However, beneath the facade of respectability, East Egg also harbors its own moral decay and corruption, as evidenced by the reckless behavior and infidelity of its inhabitants. Now, let us move on to the mood and feeling of the novel, which we can find in chapter 6, page 85. So the line is, I wouldn't ask too much of her, I ventured. You can't repeat the past. Can't repeat the past? He cried incredulously. Why, of course, you can.
So this line spoken by Gatsby reflects his belief in the possibility of recreating the past, highlighting his longing for a time that has passed. So these lines, among others, in the novel contribute to the overall mood of nostalgia and melancholy that permeates the Great Gatsby.
So overall, the nostalgia and melancholy in The Great Gatsby arise from a combination of lost dreams, irrevocable change, disillusionment, and a longing for the past. So this next we have the theme of the movie. So upon reading, we formulated this one.
Yes. So, can wealth above all else buy happiness? So,
This is just similar to the famous and very common quote that money can't buy happiness. So, in the novel, we can observe that Gatsby is so rich. No, he is very wealthy that he throws extravagant parties, numerous extravagant parties, just to find Daisy Buchanan, his lover. But when he found Daisy Buchanan, it was a complicated situation since Daisy was already married. So, after all, Gatsby died. Gatsby died because of Daisy Buchanan. And after after he died, uh, in his funeral, only few of people attended his funeral, and it is we came to the realization that in his lifetime he was rich, but after he died, no one or only a few people came to his funeral. And also in the novel it it realizes us that uh, your money, or no matter how rich or wealthy you are, it will not define you as a person.
so in addition, the novel characters like Gatsby pursue wealth in hopes of attaining happiness, but the story suggests that material wealth alone cannot guarantee fulfillment.
So thank you. That's it for our pre-critical response of The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald.